Right? And this is Osiris, the god of submission and the passer of pain. And right now, you are listening to the Three Count Podcast.
Do you wanna get live with me? Do you really wanna ride with me? I'm in the club, baby, grind on me.
Welcome everybody to another great edition of the Three Count Podcast presents Now Entering, and I'm your host, Clifford Red Dog Leonard, the man that leads you up that mountain called wrestling. And by now, after our, season 5, 360 something episode, I would just hope you say it with me. I am your Sherpa, because like your tribal chief, acknowledge me. But like every good Sherpa, you gotta have someone who's been there, done that, and can do it more efficient than you can. That's why it's never about me. It's about who's entering the ring. So who's entering the ring? You can find this man at New Age, Proving Ground, NCW, Showcase, Guts and Glory. He is a wrestler, online coach, actor, artist. He is a model. He is a fighter. He is a nutrition counselor. He is the man he said at the beginning of this show, the man filled with all the pain and giving it all to everybody else. He is the man, the myth, the legend known as Osirus.
Wow, that was quite the impressive intro. Way more professional an intro than I would have done for my podcast. So I'm beyond words at this point in time.
No, man, it's funny because uh it's I've been doing this for a few years, and I remember I did a podcast I was actually trying to bring somebody on, and they knew, like, I was still trying to learn about them, but I just asked them to come on, and they were suggested by a friend of mine, and then they were like, "Well, you mean to tell me that you want to you want me to come on your podcast, and you've never, like, you don't know anything about me?" I was like, "Whoa, wait a minute, let's slow this roll back." I was like, "That's not what this is at all." I was like, "I want to talk to people and get to know them," and so then I just started doing research on everybody after that, and so I could do these big elaborate intros.
And we cut out for a second. The last thing I got was you want to talk to people, get to know them.
Yeah, and I was like, so I just started doing these big elaborate intros so I can, like, show that I've actually gone through and researched who the hell I'm talking to.
I like it. I like it a lot. I think that's really cool, actually.
All
And I'm going to
because
turn
of
the
somebody.
and that's how it always goes. It's funny. I'm actually going to turn the tables around on you for a second. Um, what do you do to research your guests? Because you with your intro that told me you did a lot of research on me.
Yeah, I go. It's funny because, like, I like going through people's, like, database. So, like, the wrestling database, like Cage Fight,
Okay.
will usually always have, like, a lot of stuff. If I can't find anything on there, then I'll hop onto people's, like, like, their Instagram or on their Twitter, or, like, try to find, like, a Facebook post or something about them, and then just go from there. And then I'll
Okay.
just, like, check out stuff, and then just makes it sound super creepy when I say that. But being that I am
No,
a
no,
former intel
there.
specialist.
Well, there you go. So of course you've obviously got the ability and the background to do that sort of thing, and being a former intel specialist perfectly into being a very good journalist.
Yeah, one day, hopefully. I don't know about journalism. Like, I am definitely not that guy. I talk like I write like I talk, and people can tell right away that they're like, "Oh, you're not from wherever you say you're from."
No, definitely, definitely. I mean, you've definitely got the. Actually, it's interesting. Your accent reminds me of a friend of mine from college, who he had a southern accent. However, when asked where he was from, he would say Arizona,
Hmm.
and so throw. So yeah, my roommate, he had the southern accent, but he'd say he's from Arizona, so it threw everybody off. And so when I hear your accent, my immediate thought is Arizona, but I know it's not that. So where are you from?
Yeah, that's funny. I'm a little bit of everywhere, but my hometown is actually this place called Baird, Nebraska. Uh, the
Okay,
closest, the closest big city would be, well, Scottsbluff, and then from Scottsbluff, Nebraska, Denver and Cheyenne. So, like, in the western
interesting.
part of Nebraska.
Nice. I have a friend from Nebraska, actually. She's a personal trainer in New York City. Shout out
Okay.
to Caitlin if you're listening.
Hey, big shout outs. Big shout outs to Nebraska. Go Big Red. That's what we do.
Yeah, there we go.
Yo, so I guess like I want to start this off by asking like my favorite question to ask anybody, but who is Osiris?
Who is Osiris? Wow. All right. Osiris is a wrestler, and he's actually the mask of G.A. West, the person.
Mm, I like that. I like that. Because I know like when we met at the Wrestling Open, we were having fun, having a great conversation behind the scenes about kind of like our match and how our structure were going and everything like that. And then, we obviously got out and we got to perform. And I felt like the match went like really well with us. And I was like, yo, we just had like
Agreed.
instant chemistry.
No, I'd agree with that wholeheartedly. Yeah, I feel like I don't know how much inside baseball you go on the show, um, but yeah, I feel like we like you said the chemistry we had we hit it off right away. They only give you 5 minutes for your match, and and they give you about 5 minutes to prepare for it. It was our first time meeting each other, and sometimes that can be a recipe for disaster. But you and I we got in there, and it felt great.
I think it goes back to because I know you had said that you'd been in the business for a long time. And then
Yes,
I felt because it was funny because like there were some other matches there that were also like training matches for those who are wondering for the Wrestling Open. Uh but there were some other training matches there, and you could tell like the people had been around each other. They knew each other really well. They were all like, okay, just like I'm just gonna work with this person, that person, whatever. And for me, it was just idea that I can get in there and I can work with anybody and put on a solid performance. All I got to do is just be a good hand for somebody, and that's where I was thinking about. And getting into the open, like you had talked to me about your character and you were describing him, and I was like, yo, this is like fascinating because like he really loves like putting the pain on people and like he's big into just like finding a body part and then destroying it and then tapping that person out with that body part. And I was like, bro, I want to run a series and run storylines with you because this is so much fun.
yes.
Because it
No,
feels like
definitely. We'd
you're
have a blast with that.
because I feel like you have, and that's the thing. I think there's like a couple things that I really want to talk with you about because like you have like kind of like this fleshed out character and you kind of like understand like who he is and where he's from and what he wants to do. And then like on the other side of things, I want to talk about nutrition because I feel like that's the thing that doesn't get talked about enough like in the wrestling business.
Yeah, yeah, we can get into all that. Um, it's it's funny. I'm like those are two very, very different things.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm passionate about both of them, probably pretty equally though. So yeah, definitely, definitely down for that conversation. Um, I guess first, just going more in depth into who Osiris is and the character of Osiris. At the end of the day, Osiris is a sadomasochist who has found the platform of wrestling, which allows him to get out his sadomasochistic desires and needs. He found a place where he can legally administer and admonish pain upon people, and not only is it allowed he gets paid for it and he's celebrated for it as well.
It is a very odd thing to think about because I think when it comes to Red Dog, right? Like he's this mercenary who uses like laughter and comedy to like hide all the dark stuff that's happened to him, and
Yep.
then he tries to uh incorporate humor into like punishment, right? So people get upset because as they like hit him and beat him, like he kind of laughs about it, and then he when he finds himself in unfamiliar places, like he just makes dark humor jokes to get himself over it. And it's so people like obviously there's this little red guy who's hidden here with a suit. uh a lot of people realize they're like, oh, so you're like Deadpool but just like in wrestling form. I'm like, yeah, this is exactly who I'm supposed to be.
No, definitely a
But
very
then
simplified way of saying it.
yeah, It is, and it works in my favor because like anybody who's like watched like comic book movies or like reads comics or just even like is into like laughing and listening to humor side, they all love the aspect like, oh, here's this dude who just understands that because that's the one thing I think a lot of people forget is that yes, like while there's people who are in the military like myself, when I was in, we enjoy like we can be that guy that's like straightforward, like I'm very stoic and this is what I want to do. We also have like this other side that just is just a humor side that we can learn to play and like have fun and when we're getting like I remember one time I was in a wrestling match with Mr. Graham, and he's gonna kill me for telling this story, and I don't really care. Uh, he hit me with a flash in a corner, and he stood in front of like the crowd. He was just staring, just cold staring, like this one girl who was wearing a Red Dog T-shirt. And I remember just leaning in his ear, and I was just like, "I love you," and he just like he just pushed me back and just like walked away from it, like trying not to break. And that's like, I was like,
Yeah.
bro, this is exactly what I want. I was like, I'm going to do this stuff, and that's it's fun. And then there's some little goofy gaga comedy stuff I like to hit like in my matches, but like overall, like Red Dog is just he's just a guy who he wants to be the top mercenary, and he knows that one, if he can get you to crack, like that's all it's gonna take.
I like it. I like it. And I find it interesting, actually. I think Osiris and Red Dog could have a very fun feud because they both they handle pain differently, you know.
Yeah.
Like you said, Red Dog, he uses humor to mask the pain, whereas for Osiris, Osiris draws inspiration from pain. Um, you know, Osiris wears a towel over his head on his entrance to the ring, and the reason for that is so that Osiris can sit and meditate and think about all the painful events that he's been through in his life, and then take that and then dish it out within the match.
Mm, I like that too. See. I just imagine getting put into a lock and then just like, hey, it's kind of tickling. You'd be like, what? No, and just crank harder and just laughing harder. Be like,
Exactly, exactly.
it would just be it's see, and I
So
think
yeah.
like those I think that's what makes like cool wrestling is that like great wrestlers and different styles and then just like things click. And maybe that's why we like just because we
Yes.
both like kind of understood that we understood the assignment of what was being looked for, but we both just like hit it. And that's what I think. Like a lot of people were, they're all like, "No, you guys had like a great match. You guys had fun and stuff like that." And even like the
Yeah,
boys
and
pops for it, like during the trial, and we're like, "Yeah, no,
yes,
like
yeah, the boys watching, like, no, it was. We drew people in. We both had personality, so that helps a lot. And then I think the big thing actually was something you said about yourself going into it, and I was of the same mindset, wanting to be a good hand and wanting to do what's going to be best for the match. You know, we both. One thing I recall is when we both started talking. It was like, oh, do you prefer to work baby or heel? And we both were like, we can do either. We were both flexible and willing to work with the other, in whichever way was going to be best for the match. And you don't always see that. You don't always get that.
no, I definitely agree." I know something that my trainer told me when I was living in Maryland. He was like, "You like good baby faces should be able to work heel, and good heels should be able to work baby face, and it should just flow naturally." And I took that to heart because I remember like the funny thing was is the first time I ever got to work as a heel, right, was coincidentally at the Wrestling Open in a tryout match.
Oh, that's really funny.
And I yeah, and I really didn't know what I was doing, right? So I was like, whatever, I think I'm supposed to be like a dirtbag and just like, talk shit while I'm doing stuff. And for the most part I was, but I just really didn't really have a full handle on like what it meant to be like a heel. So fortunately, I know a couple guys who live in Baltimore, which is where I was living at the time. When I came back from the Wrestling Open, that's what I did. I got linked up with my friends who are heels, and I was like, "Yo, can I just ride with you guys for a little bit and just like join you guys on the ring and stuff, just kind of understand like how to like draw heat?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure." Coincidentally, I still haven't left that team. I go back and work with them, but yeah, no. So it was just so much fun, like working with pure ignorance and like understanding like what it meant to be a good heel and get heat and draw heat, and you don't have to do things like you don't have to tell someone like, "Oh, well, you're fat," blah 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 blah. Like, just low hanging fruit. No, you came more. It came up on higher levels, and
Yeah.
I spent like a year, just sitting with those guys, riding with those guys, talking to them, kind of getting in the same mindset that they were in, and then next thing you know, when I came back up, and I remember working a match. No, actually, I'm sorry. We were in Maryland, and I was working a match at EWA, and man, the moment I came out the curtain, like the fans just started booing me instantly. And after the match, like they even hated me more because like some things that happened in this match, and the guy that I was helping out with won. And I remember like this lady booed me, right? And I was like, I don't know why you're booing me at all. Look at your husband right next to you. He's over here on Tinder. You might as well like talk to him. And I remember like she looked down. He was on Instagram or something like that, but there was a girl on his phone, and bruh, I was like, mm, busted, and I just walked away. But
Oh,
it
that
was
fits
just
with your gimmick perfectly to be able to
yeah.
do that too.
Yeah, and people hated it, and I was like, "Yeah." I was like, as a baby face, like, it's funny, and as a heel, it's annoying as hell.
Yes, yes. And that's kind of the key, I think, to, having a good gimmick is to be able to keep your gimmick the same, whether you're babyface or heel, but just understanding how to change, slight little things to emphasize babyface or heel.
Yeah, and it's important, like you said. I mean, you gotta be able to flow with it, because sometimes, like, you never know. Like, I remember telling a kid in the back one time, we were in Lewistown, Pennsylvania, right? This place called HWF, and I was like, I had missed the show, right? And I had missed the show for different reasons, and we won't have to worry about getting into that. But I missed the
Yeah.
show, and I'd pulled out, and this kid cut this promo about me, telling me that I picked up my bone and I took it home, right? Like that's what he said. Um,
Okay.
and I fully expected the crowd to not like me when I came back, right? So I came back in like, say I missed the October show, I came back in like the January show, and I fully expected the crowd not to like me, but they were still cheering me, right? And then I beat the kid, and then me and the person that was talking about me, we met at the March show, so we set up like the storyline for it. And when we set up the storyline, I told he was like in the back, and he was calling this match as he was a heel and I was a face. And I was like, listen, bro, I just need you to know that if I come out and the crowd cheers me, but the crowd cheers you louder, we're switching this whole match. And he's like, "What?"
Mhm.
I was like, "We're switching the whole match. Like, I will come in as a heel. I will start doing stuff to make myself a heel and turn you and have you be a babyface." And he's like, "No, this crowd's gonna hate me, bro. Don't worry. Blah blah blah. I'm gonna make sure." Sure enough, man, I came out. I came out like I normally do. Hey yo, let's go. He blasted me from behind. The crowd still cheered him. And then like finally he had to do he had to do like I think he was like yelling at some old lady or something like that who was like trying to stand up for me, and he yelled at her, and finally the crowd like started like he back on him, but I was like, bro, that was close. I
Right.
was like, yo, I was fully ready to take over and just smash him into a post and be like, nah, man, we ain't cheering for Artie Mosh. That's not happening.
And
But
that's good that you're, be ready for that sort of thing. Look at WrestleMania 18, The Rock and Hulk Hogan. I
right.
think that's one of the biggest and greatest examples of being able to switch like that.
Yeah, it's a huge thing. I've watched that match so many times just to like learn from it. I'm like, bro, it's a
Right?
masterpiece of like how a double turn should happen.
It
I mean,
really is, especially when it's done organically.
yeah, and Brett and Austin was kind of like it was a good flip, but yeah,
Yeah.
that moment when Rock knew like, hey yo, like they're not cheering for me tonight. They're behind Hulk Hogan.
Exactly. And that's, you bring up Brett and Austin, which is probably one of the greatest double turns, but that was planned, that was
Yeah.
and great execution, getting all of that to where they wanted to get it. Whereas Rock Hogan, like that was just the crowd saying, "No, this is the way we're going tonight." And the Rock and Hogan being able to, being the great workers that they are and being able to flip that script.
See, and I remember like I think it was Cesaro and Hart. when they were a tag team.
Mhm.
And I think they were working a New Day, and the New Day was a face at the time. It might have been Jimmy and Jay. I can't remember exactly which team. Somebody in the comments gonna tell me, and I'm gonna be like, all right, whatever. Um, but anyway, so they're on the European tour, and they were in, I think they were in Switzerland, and
Okay.
they called this match as if like Cesaro and Cesaro and TJ were the heels, and I think it was like the New Day was the faces. And when they went out there, they got in the ring, they always kind of looked, and then like when the New Day did their thing, the crowd booed him, and Cesaro was like,
Mm.
"Switch."
Right?
But you're talking about like four professionals who just like understood the moment and they flipped it so that the New Day was the heel team, and I was like, bro, that's so awesome.
Nice. And, was this a house show, do you know?
Yeah, it was on. They were on the European tour, and I think it was a
On the
house show.
European. Yeah, so
Yeah,
and that's even better because then you can really get away with that sort of thing.
yep, yep, yep. But I think about that too, like like we've been talking about, right? It's just you have to understand your character and then understand like how your character would switch everything on the dime if he has to, and
Yes.
it comes to build. I tell a lot of kids this, like that ask me, they're like, "How do you know so much about Red Dog?" I was like, "Listen, I built the world. Like I ask myself as a character, I'll ask myself in character like things about me, right? And I'll be like, "Yo, does Red Dog prefer cats or dogs?" And they're like, well, he prefers dogs. What's his favorite breed? Any. Okay. Well, does he prefer turtles or snakes? Like neither. Like I always ask these like random ass questions, and I'm like, yeah, this would be fun. If he had to pick one fruit to eat for the rest of his life, would it be anything but coconut? Like,
I like that.
but it's like I just think about like how all these things would be so much fun, and then as you build that world up, you start to learn like this is what your character wants to do. This is how he wants to wrestle. This is how he wants to fight. This is what happens if he gets busted open in a match. How's he gonna understand? How's he gonna take that? So it's like
Yes.
I have to. I try to think about as many scenarios as I can, and then build the world up around what he's doing.
That's awesome. I love that.
So let me hop into this question. I love asking this question because it's fun. And you've probably been in for a while. So let me know. What's the worst bump you've ever taken?
Worst bump I've ever taken? Huh, that is a good question. Oh, actually, very easy answer. Off the top of my head, it was a show in Pennsylvania, and I had taken a uranagi, and the guy was like 6'6", 6'7", something like that. And so I'm way up in the air, and then this is completely my fault. But it was one of those things coming down, and I was like, I should have landed already. And so I turned my head to look, and I
Mm,
put my arm down, and it was one of those things where boom, landed right on my arm. Thankfully, didn't break it, anything like that, but it was sprained for like 3 weeks.
damn.
So
Hey,
yeah, that that was my worst bump. But it was just, and it's just such a funny thing because it was one of those things where it's like I was probably in the air for a second, but it felt so long where I had enough time to be like, I should have landed by now.
it's one of those things where I tell people, I'm like, yo, and one of my friends, he had a history of like turning and putting his arm down. I was like, hey, bro, just if you, because like I love throwing spine busters, so I tell people all the time, I was like, just put your hands on my back and just hold on.
Yeah,
I was like,
yep.
because the moment you let go, all hell's gonna break loose. Like you're gonna hurt yourself. And in the match, I had this match where I hit 3 spine busters in a row, and the first 2 I hit were just crazy, right? But the last one, I'm not quite sure what happened, but I know that my friend turned and he like went to go put his arm down, and I was like, and I remember like nothing happened, right? And I told him I was like, "Hey, yo, do not ever do that again, please,
Yeah.
for the love of God, do not do it again." I was like, it's bad enough that I weigh like 205 shoot wise. I was like, so you weighing, like a buck 80, me coming in at 200, and we're probably hitting the ground at closer to like 40 miles an hour. Yeah,
Right?
you
Like
probably should just not do that again.
exactly. Exactly. And
uh,
yeah, that's a it's something that should be ingrained into you when you first start training, but also it's one of those things where the brain sometimes kicks in and it's just like protect yourself, but it's like, oh, that's actually the opposite of protecting yourself in this instance.
It's true. It's so true. And then I cringe when I see people like even like in pro like in WWE or in AEW when they do that too, or they put their leg down to like try to help like avoid.
Yes,
I'm like, bro, like you're just asking to blow a ligament out or blow a joint completely gone to
complete,
smithereens.
completely. It's so scary, so scary. Uh,
100%.
a- and as we've been talking, I've been thinking about it. I was like, oh, easily other worst bump I ever took was I took a power bomb on chairs on concrete um, in a street fight, and I couldn't walk like for 2 days.
Mm.
So yeah, that was
Crazy
pretty
enough,
rough.
it's not the first time I've heard someone get power bombed on concrete.
I believe it. I believe it.
Oh. Oh, yeah, I couldn't do that. If someone was asking me like, "Hey, yo, can you take this bump outside on the concrete?" I'd be like, "Nah, no, bro. Like, I
Oh
have a
yeah,
job." Like,
that's funny. I'm like today I'd be asked to take a power bomb in the ring, and I'm like, let's change it to something else. Like,
something that's not gonna hurt so much. Like, I like
yeah,
taking good power bombs, like, but I'm just like I love taking, like, big dojo bumps too, so, like, if you get me in a choke slam, like,
yep,
I will ride that all the way down and have
I'm
so
with
much
you.
fun doing it. And it's you know what? That probably goes back to Red Dog. It's just a sickness. Like,
Right, right.
I'm just it's just for me, I'm just like, yeah, I'm kind of, like, into this. Like, I remember, so I had a person who, he loved doing uranagis as well, and,
Okay,
he went to hit me, and the funny thing was is he was looking for somebody so in the match that we were in a fatal four-way, and, he's like, "Yo, I wanna hit somebody with, like, the bookend," right? And I wasn't around and asked about this, right? But my friend goes, "Oh, ask Cliff. He'll do it. Like, he'll jump really high for you too." And I was like, I didn't know about this, but then he came back and talked to me. He was like, "Yo, man, can I hit you with the bookend?" I was like, "Oh yeah, no problem." And he was like, "Yeah." He
you
was like,
call
"Yeah,
it the
Chess."
bookend, not the rock bottom.
Yeah, he goes,
That's interesting to me.
yeah.
Like genuinely, like that's
But he goes, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, no, I'm gonna hit you with the bookend." Yeah, and then Chaz said that you would just jump for me, and I was like, "Okay, thanks, Chaz." I was like, because
right.
he knew I'd do it too, and sure enough, when he did it, he lost me in the air,
Oh,
like as
jeez.
because he thought that I was like, they thought that I was just kidding, like your boy's got some serious springs, and they thought I was just playing. So when I jump, like I have the video, but he's like here, and then it goes here, and also you see him go like this, and then he
Trying to
has to
catch you.
catch me, like because I'm like way up in the air, and I remember hitting, and in my lower back, man, I was like, I don't know. I remember the next morning I woke up and I was like, I don't know what I did. I'm pretty sure it was because of the Uranagi, but
Yeah,
I was like, yeah, I just felt twisted. It's
right.
like, yeah,
And what's tough with that bump too is it's so easy to go wrong either direction, landing too high or too low, you
yeah,
know.
yeah, 100%. Because as soon as you just realize it too, and I remember like being in the air, I was like, and I thought the same thing. I was like, dang, bro, this is high.
Right,
Just
right.
swoosh. And I remember like the crowd was like, yo, I've never seen anyone get so high on that before. And I was like, yeah, I I can do this.
Right, like oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
So talk to me, man. One of the questions I like asking, another one too, right? Is was there a moment that something made you just go, I need to get into the business now? Or was it like I mean, everybody's gonna be like, "Yo, I've been watching wrestling forever as a kid," but I'm looking for like, was there a match or like something that just like clicked in yours? Like, I gotta go.
That's a good question, actually. As I'm thinking about it, I mean, because yeah, I'd wanted to be a wrestler since I was a little kid. It was one of those things where I had no question at any point in time, like, what am I doing when I grow up? I'm going to be a wrestler. But as far as when that moment actually hit, And I'm like, yeah, was there anything going on at that time that it was like, oh, like now, now is the time. And as I try to think back on it, as funny as this is, I'm going to say actually it was probably an indie show that I went to. Um, I was going to college at Sacred Heart University at the time, and Johnny Heartbreaker, who would later go on to be Romeo Roselli in WWE, he also was going to Sacred Heart University. He was a couple years older than me, and they did a show at the school, and he had like this big entrance, and because everyone knew him and everyone knew like at school like, oh, he's the wrestler, like uh and when I saw that I was like, oh wow, like and he'd be working out in the gym and I'd see him in there sometimes. We'd be working out at the same time, and I never talked to him or anything like that. I always just knew like, oh, this guy's the wrestler, like and so then seeing that indie show at the school, seeing his entrance, seeing everyone react, I think for me it was like, oh yeah, like I need to do this. I can do this. Like, and it wasn't long after that that I went to Killer Kowalski School to check it out, and then probably 6 months later I actually joined.
It's been wild because like since moving up here, right? Like obviously Killer Kowalski is a legend. We're not just gonna, there's no way to like beat around there. But to see the influence that this man has had throughout all of New England, like it's crazy to me. Like I'm just learning, I'm hearing more stories, but I see more schools that are opened up that are like, yeah, we're attached to Killer Kowalski. I'm like, dang, everybody is attached to it.
Yeah, I mean he's pretty much the grandfather or godfather of New England wrestling.
Yeah.
For a period of time, like he was the guy. And then ultimately, I think his students went on to open up their own schools and kind of watered down the legacy slightly. And I don't say that in a bad way, but it's just one of those things where before he had shut down his school, his students were already like, his past students were kind of running their own schools and being like, oh, this is part of the Kowalski legacy, which it is. It's like, yeah, you're grandfathered in that regards, but it's like, well, he still got his school though, like um, and it's interesting, because there's different levels of, trying to think of how to word it, kind of like a almost like an insiders club of like, were you really trained by Kowalski? So for me, it's funny. I trained there in '02 and '03, and the school itself shut down at the end of '03, and at the beginning of '04 he sold his name to Chaotic. At the time it was Chaotic Training Center, and then he sold his name to them for them to become the Killer Kowalski school, and all of a sudden now his name is attached to that legacy. For me, I have a problem with that. I mean, not personally or anything like that. I could care less. But it's one of those things where I'm like, well, you're not really Kowalski students. Like, you didn't learn under Killer Kowalski. Whereas I'm like, I learned under Killer Kowalski. Um, but what's funny is I recently met up with someone that trained with Kowalski in the '80s,
Mm,
and they feel like I didn't learn under Killer Kowalski. They're like, you've learned under Slick Wagner Brown, who was training under Killer Kowalski. They're like, I learned under Killer Kowalski. And I was like, I get it. And I get these different levels of this,
mm,
Because, yeah, by the time I got to the school, Walter was like already 80.
yeah.
So he wasn't really doing the training, he was overseeing the training. And when there were things he didn't like, he would be very vocal about it. Um, but, Slick Wagner Brown was really the one doing the training at that point. Um, so yeah, for the guys that went there in the '80s and early '90s, they're like, no, like Killer Kowalski was still doing the training at that point. It's a very different thing. And I'm like, yeah, I get that, and I get that perspective for sure.
It's funny because like when people ask me all the time, like who was my trainer, like I tell them like, I was trained under Sickend over in Sykesville, Maryland. But then when people ask me, well, who was his trainer? I was like, Ruckus. And then they're like, so did you train under Ruckus? I was like, he has trained me in a couple things, but I would not say that I am trained by Ruckus. Like
I'm
I
with
am,
you.
yeah, I'm affiliated under the tree of Ruckus. I'm just not like I am not a I am and I'm not a Drexen because there's been things that Ruckus has like sat with me in a ring and like taught me that like I've still utilized now. But as
I'm with
far
you.
as like but as far as like as far as like him like having his fingerprints like on who like I ended up becoming. They're there, but they're not there because like the last student that he trained was sickened, and then sickened like was one
after
training
that.
me.
So yeah, so no, it's a very different thing. And just a heads up, we're going to do something different for the show today. We're taking everybody on a quick grocery store run.
Hey, let's
Uh,
go to the grocery store.
yeah, you want to talk nutrition, right? So
Yeah.
this is a great opportunity to do such.
Yeah,
And
I love this because this I think this is
and
the first time that I've ever been in a in a grocery store.
right,
So,
you've never been in
it's
a
fun.
grocery store before?
No,
That's
not me like that, but
I know.
100%. Actually, now I'm
And,
thinking about it, I've never stepped foot into a grocery store. Never will ever again. Ever.
I
I'll
don't
just sit
blame you.
outside and look at it like, there's probably a lot of food in there I don't want.
Right? Exactly. Not worth going into it. So,
No, but to
but
to to hop into that subject, man,
yeah.
it's one of those things that a lot of people like, especially when you're traveling, because like the hardest part about nutrition, right, especially in like in the business, right, is the travel because like while some people are going to be students of like Bob Evans, right? Brutal Bob is going to tell you like, hey, these are how you would prepare for these long trips and do this, that, and the other. It's also
Mhm.
very complicated because it's like you want to stop and like just grab some real quick. You go into like a McDonald's or like a Burger King or something to grab something quick, but the amount of unhealthy food that we eat is ridiculous.
It's true. And I'm as guilty of it as anyone else. And it's one of those things, ultimately comes down to choices and preparation. When I'm really on point, I'm not eating any fast food. When I'm on a road trip or something like that, I'm eating my rotisserie chicken that I grabbed at, whatever grocery store with some fruit that they had cut up. And it's like, oh, that'll get me a couple meals.
Yep.
But when I'm not on point, it's, what's open? What can I get to? You know, and
Yep.
unfortunately, I'm more often not on point than an on point. So I definitely understand the struggle that we all go through.
I know for me, it's like one of those things where it's like you're trying to find like this healthy balance of like your proteins, your carbs, or even to your fats, and then you're like putting in like you ask people for like the formula and stuff like that, and then they're like telling you like how to like equivalate it and stuff, and then you're like, all right, I've had this much today. I need to kind of figure out what I'm going to do for tonight, right? Because like I'll give a perfect example for you guys wondering at home. So today, this morning, I had woken up right, and the first thing I did was drink some, after brushing my teeth, right, and doing all that. So drink some
Of
water,
course.
right, take my vitamins and stuff like that, brother. And then from there, I had like a bowl of cereal, right. But the best part is that my daughter, right, who
Yeah.
we still have her kid bowls. Like
Okay.
if I pour cereal into it, even if I fill it to the top, it's 1 cup.
Hey there.
So I know exactly what I'm doing, right?
Good.
And
How
then
you doing?
I'll put some milk in there and then just start eating. So I know that I've had like a cup of milk and a cup of cereal, but it's so hard to like remember like, hey, I've done this and I gotta have a protein shake, and then I'm gonna go here and I got this and I got that. And I have like 3 different types of protein that I like to take because I'm like, yo, one's designed for post workouts, one's designed strictly for overnights, one's designed for, you know, in between, like right before your pre-workout and right after your lunch, so or right after your breakfast. So you're like always juggling all this nutrition stuff. And I'm like, bro, this is an obsession.
It is, and it's everything is relative to what level of shape do you want to be in, and what are you willing to put into it. And that's where supplementation. Thank
I
you so
do.
much. Have a great night.
I
And
do like the idea of like just having a rotisserie chicken though, because that just sounds delicious. You get them for like
yeah,
$5 and just crush them.
yeah, rotisserie chicken's like the best thing to eat on the road. Like, it's not expensive. It's pretty healthy, all things considered. Uh, I definitely say, and again, it's all about preparation and choices. So if you've got a show coming up, give yourself that extra 20 minutes to go to the grocery store, get the rotisserie chicken, make sure you got plastic utensils, some napkins. You're definitely going to need the napkins. And yeah, then go to town.
Yep. It's perfect. I feel that same way. I know like for me, um, Because the craziest part though is that like I get mad anxiety, right? And so when I get mad anxiety, the first thing I do is I grab like a bag. I think you were with me too. Like I grabbed a bag of gummy bears, like out of my bag. Like that's my prep
Yes, that's
is to just be eating gummy bears right before I matches. Well, crazy enough, they're actually good for you because they give you that quick sugar, that quick rush that you need to
well, good for
get.
you is a relative term. I don't know if I could ever call gummy bears good for you. Uh,
Yeah. Hey, whatever gets me off that super nervous kick, I'm all for it.
I completely understand. I completely understand. And so no, there are far worse ways. There are far worse ways.
Oh yeah.
Uh, I will say actually something to give a shot. Walter taught me this was honey.
Mm,
Um, just using natural raw honey, about a spoonful before a match, and to help get the jitters out. And I did that for a while. Actually, I don't do it anymore, but that is something I did for a while, and it worked for me.
that actually sounds like something I will definitely do because if I can get honey, I definitely will do that. I love honey.
So yeah, I will say. Actually, it's funny. I was just at Trader Joe's just now. They usually have raw honey for anywhere between like $5 and $8. And they've got one that I like. It's got what I call the cat butt, and that when you squeeze it, it stops itself, like
Mm,
and doesn't overflow. Um, and so that one's great for if you want to just take it on the road. You can just squeeze it directly in your mouth, and once you stop squeezing, it's going to cut itself off.
that's that's see, this is what it is all about, right? Not so much about trading secrets, but just letting you guys know about all the great stuff that you guys can get going too. Because I'm like, yo, I was like, I never thought about honey, and now I'm just gonna be curious and just like buy some honey and just like take it with me everywhere.
Yeah, try it out. It's far healthier for you than gummy bears.
Is it though? Is it though? Is it
It
though?
is. It
Yo,
is.
I need quick carbs.
Honey is a quick carb, and it just comes from bees. It doesn't come from a processed plant, with 20 ingredients.
I mean, this is true. This is true, but Albanese is also very good, and they just come from the crushed bones of other animals. Hold on one second, real quick, okay?
Yeah,
All right. So, no, it was funny because like even going with nutrition, right? Uh, uh, it's something else that comes into play too. Is like you need to stay hydrated, right? That's like the biggest thing that
absolutely.
that needs to happen. Um, and yeah, so like even today, right? It was 124 ounces of water that I was drinking, right? So I have a 68 ounce gallon of jug, right? That I like to just drink, right, throughout the day. But then with
All
that
right, hold
also,
on. So
like,
it's either 68 ounces or a gallon.
I'm sorry, no, it's 68 ounces. Yeah, it's my fault.
Okay,
Yeah, it's just your mind gets to thinking too much. Anyway,
I understand.
68 ounces of water, and yeah, so I just drink all that throughout the whole day, right? But in between that, right, you figure, if you're doing like a normal protein shake, right, you have like 8 to 12 ounces of water, right? So from there's your 8 ounces. I had three of those, right? And then uh my when I'm working out, I have my own like BCAAs that I mix up, and they're using a 24-ounce uh cup. So I have that. So
Yeah.
I mix that up and then go from there. And like, so yeah. So the one problem that comes with being well hydrated is you have to pee a lot. But nonetheless, yeah.
Very true.
Yeah.
And
But
that's
yeah,
actually
so it's
something
not
I've been
really it's
experimenting a lot with lately.
like
Is
drinking more water.
is my hydration. Well, actually drinking less
Yeah.
water, and
Mm,
experimenting with my hydration levels. Uh, it's funny. I follow a number of people within the, I guess you call it the health and fitness space. Um, and right now, a big one that I'm really enjoying is Brian Johnson, not the Liver King, but who's also known as Brian, whose name is also Brian Johnson, but instead Brian Johnson, the tech mogul, who is trying to reverse the aging process.
mm,
And he has some very interesting theories, but the big thing is everything he does is measured. So he has his body measured like every day on like every factor: sleep, eating, exercise, like, skin aging, like just everything is measured. Um, and one of his things he questions is, where do these numbers that we're told to follow come from?
Yeah.
For example, talking water, he's like, why are we told to drink a gallon of water a day? He's like, everybody's got different types of bodies, different size bodies. He's like, so a gallon can't be the answer. He's like, that's probably the closest answer that covers the most people, but that's not going to necessarily fit everybody specifically.
Right.
And so he has his hydration levels measured, and like he figured out exactly like how many ounces of water he needs per day. He knows exactly how many calories he needs per day, and he doesn't vary from that at all. I want to say the number is like 1,839 calories, and it's like that's how many calories he eats, not one more, not one less.
Mm.
Um, and so, because of his thinking and just watching what he does, it's had me think, I'm like, I pee a lot, and I don't know that I need to be peeing that much. Uh, it's always clear. So that tells me like, yeah, I think I'm properly hydrated. So I've actually been experimenting with drinking less water. Um, I've gone from drinking about so a gallon of water is 128 ounces. And I was drinking roughly about 140 ounces a day.
Mm.
So now I've lowered that. Right now, I'm at 132 ounces, and I'm probably going to lower that more to about 116. It's going to be my next one. See how that feels, and then I might get as low as 100 ounces of water a day, depending on how much I'm peeing as I go throughout the process.
Right. See, I'm always fascinated with like the hydration side of things because, like, as an amateur wrestler in college, like to be able to wrestle, like you had to pee clear, right? So, like for me, it was always about like how can I get and maneuver like and to make myself feel hydrated but not really be hydrated, which was kind of weird.
Because
I
you
could
had
have
to
just
make
stayed
weight.
hydrated. Yeah, I would have made weight anyway if I would just pee clear. But it was crazy. So for me, I think what it was for me was when I started researching numbers and stuff like that and putting things together, I was like, yo, um, I knew that I had to be. I at first, someone had convinced me that I needed to be somewhere between like 3,000 to 3,300 like calories. Like we're even just talking about like just within like the last few months. And I was like, yo, that seems like a lot of food to eat. I was like, I can't ingest that much. And I don't have the budget for it. But two, I
I
definitely
hear
like,
that.
I was like, that is an obscene amount of food to just like shove in my face. And then they were like, well, and you need to be at least, I think they said half your body weight, right? And then that's just the start. And for like I think it's like every 10 pounds or over, it should be another 5 ounces of water or something like that. And like that was like the ballpark number that came for me. And so when I looked at it, I thought to myself, I was like, well, if I'm weighing 205, it means I should be at like about 102 to be like right around my area that I want to be at. But I was like, I also weigh, sometimes I wake up and I'm like 210. So I'm like, all right, so should probably be around this. So now I'm like, when I was going back and doing the numbers, they're like, yeah, but don't forget, like, you got to replenish all the water that you lost from like sweating and working out. I'm like, bro, this math is not math, man. This is not working
Right. It's a really it's an interesting thing, and I find the study of the individual human body especially interesting. From my time when I was doing personal training and nutritional counseling, I really enjoyed working with individuals and like taking the time to get to know their bodies and then be like, oh, like this is what works for you, and this is very different than what works for my other client. Uh, and it's just interesting because it's like, yeah, at the end of the day, there is no cookie cutter formula, as far as what's going to be best for everybody.
right. It's crazy. And even for me, like being a personal trainer now and like trying to teach people like, yo, we need to do this, we need to do that. Like I'm not a nutrition counselor by any means, but just trying to tell them like they're like, well, what would you do? I was like, well, this is what I would do because I know this is what works for me. I was like, so you got to find like what works for you. And I always give like the roundabouts, but never like the this is what you directly should be eating or this is what you should directly be doing.
For
I always
sure.
find it interesting when like a certain person's like, well, I want to put on weight, but then lose I want to add mass without adding on body fat. I'm like, okay, well, just lift heavy. just lift heavy. They're like, well, won't that maybe add weight? I'm like, that's not what you asked. You said you wanted to
Right?
lose fat. You didn't say anything about like bulking up. Like you just said, I want to add I want to get big and then lose fat. I'm like, yeah, just lift big, bro. Like that's just how it
Yeah.
starts. And
That's,
it's insane. Like the way you have to like sculpture everything.
oh, completely. Well, what I find interesting, and you may or may not agree, but I feel at this point, regardless of what your goals are, lift heavy. Like, try to get big, lift heavy. Try to lose fat, lift heavy.
Yeah, I feel like I saw
But,
that
but
in a TikTok once just recently.
that's funny, but it's true because the body will adapt to the stresses,
Yeah, 100%. It's
and
been funny for
otherwise
me
just
because like,
adjust your diet accordingly.
well, like for me, like I just got back into lifting heavy again because for a
Yeah,
while I was like, yo, let me just kind of float around this area, like, and just stay here. And I remember just doing everything was like 4 sets of 12. And now just recently I was like, yo, let me crank this up a bit and start experimenting with like some different sets and different types of training. So I'm very curious to see what's going to happen in the next 6 weeks. So you guys will get to be a part of this. You'll get to see. You'll be like, oh, that definitely has changed from Cliff.
nice.
So yeah, it's part of like the shows. Like as I like put each episode out week to week, people get to see like my changes and stuff. So I should actually go back and watch the first episode again and just see like how much I've changed from
Yeah, right.
2020.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, I can see a lot of change in you just from when I met you. Like I said in your that picture, I'm like, yeah, you can see it in your shoulders and arms. Like you can tell you're putting the work in.
Always putting the work in. The
Nice. That's
grind.
what it's all about.
Yeah. Especially because for us, I mean, what makes it great though is that like being a personal trainer, like I get to be in the gym and just work out and then like, coach others, but then like I'm putting in the cardio, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. All the things that we talk about that are going to help you in the wrestling business, I get to do on the side. So the only other part that I really got to start doing more of, and I know this is going to be like pulling back the curtain way more, getting to training.
I,
That's
I
it.
hear that.
Yeah, that's the top one. No, let
Uh,
me ask you this question before we jump into my favorite part of the 3 Count podcast.
yeah.
What's one of the hardest lessons you've had to learn being in the business?
Uh, don't date someone that hates wrestling. It's just not going to work out. And,
I like that.
I, I'd, yeah, that would definitely be the hardest thing I learned because and it's funny, I was already wrestling when I had met this person. Uh, and they had brought up how they hated wrestling, but that has nothing to say other than it's what I do. Uh, but where the issue came in, well, there are a few issues. Number one, like they hated wrestling, so we couldn't watch it together, which pretty much that's mainly what I watch. You know,
Yeah.
so we had that issue, and then beyond that, they started not understanding when I had to miss things because I had a wrestling show, and they're like, "Oh, for that stupid wrestling." It's like, well, it's not stupid, you know.
Yeah.
And but
Like
so
be
yeah, so
passionate about it.
that exactly. So yeah, that would definitely be the hardest thing I think I learned. Don't date someone that hates wrestling. Um,
Mm.
Beyond that, it's funny. I'm like, I have loved all of my experiences within the wrestling business. A lot of people I know are bitter towards wrestling, and they've had, they went into it with certain expectations and did not, have those expectations met. For myself, I'm happy to say that I feel anytime I put in the proper amount of work, I received back the proper amount of, uh, I don't know, reward, so although I haven't met my goals, I don't know that I ever worked hard enough to reach them. But anything that I've worked hard enough to reach, I have reached, and I'm very happy about that. And so yeah, I would say as a lesson, this is just for other people, especially if you're just getting started in wrestling. Um, work twice as hard as the goal you want to meet, and you'll probably get there.
Mm, I like that. I like that.
So sweet, just came up with it.
Yeah, good. Because I feel like I've heard people kind of use that same sentence in a like in a different manner. Like how did I hear it the one time? Shoot for the stars, and you might, even if you don't hit the stars, you might still land on the moon or something like that.
Yes, yes, yep.
I like that. Actually, I like yours a lot better. I'm gonna start using that.
No, thanks. I just came up with that, but it was something that yeah, as we were talking about it, I was thinking about it. I'm like, yeah, I think about the things that I have achieved, and I'm like, with all of them, I'm like, yeah, I was working like twice as hard as I felt I would have if I wanted to achieve those things. I was trying to achieve something harder, and got those things. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, maybe if I had worked twice as hard as that, I would have achieved even higher.
Yep, yep. No, it makes sense. All right, so we're gonna hop into my favorite part of the Three Count Podcast, and that is the Three Count Podcast 10 count questions. And Mr. Osiris, this is how it works. I'm gonna fire off 10 questions at you rapid fast, and whatever your answer is, that's your answer.
Okay, does it have to be a one-word answer?
It could be.
Could be, but doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be.
Okay, but just first thing that comes to mind.
Yep.
Sweet, let's
So
do this.
we're gonna put on an imaginary timer for added pressure. Bing. And
Uh-oh.
in the words of my favorite commentator, Mike Goldberg, here we go. SmackDown or Raw?
SmackDown.
Favorite actor?
GA West.
Love it. Marvel or DC?
Ooh, can I say Toriyama?
You can say Toriyama.
Toriyama.
Favorite movie?
American Gangster.
Let's go. Apple or Android?
I use Apple, but I'm an Android fan.
Okay. Favorite cartoon?
Dragon Ball Z.
Let's go.
Yeah,
Pepsi or Coke?
neither.
Good.
In fact,
Favorite?
not only neither, we'll step it up. Element electrolytes. Check out the Instagram link for a discount.
Like it. Favorite podcast?
Favorite podcast aside from the Three Count podcast, which one of the best podcasts out there today. Uh, there's also Before the Three Count podcast, hosted by Osirus. That's a great one. And when I'm not listening to Three Count podcast or Before the Three Count podcast, I'm probably listening to either Jim Cornette or What Culture.
Mm, I like that. I like that. Nominate one person that you want to see on this podcast.
Ooh, Brett Ryan Goslin, if he hasn't already been on there.
BRG, yeah, actually,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna keep that one though. But BRG actually has been on our show 3 times. Yeah,
Oh
he's
wow. Okay, so
yeah.
that was a horrible choice.
BRG is like one of my favorite people to bring on the podcast.
Low key, one of my favorite people in the world. So that was why I thought of him first. But you know what? Hold on. He's been on here 3 times. Have you had Slick Wagner Brown on yet?
Actually, so we're gonna put this way. When you Now you put that name out there, right? So Slick actually has been on our podcast. Actually had him on for season 3. I think it was season 3. Somebody will tell me. We had a lot, but he by the time this comes out, he will have actually been on our other show, now entering 201. You guys can go check that out.
Ooh, okay. Well, then I've got one that I'm positive you haven't had yet.
Who's that?
The premier Louis Leon.
You're absolutely correct, and that's who will be nominated for this show.
There we go. There we go.
And then, last but not least, my favorite question to ask every single person who comes on the show: favorite curse word.
Favorite curse word? Interesting. Oh, wow. Um, so I'm gonna say the F word, even
Which
though
is
I
allowed
don't
to be
really
said.
use it. Yes. Well, so here's what's funny about it. I don't really use it in my everyday vocabulary, uh, but I'm like, it's such a what's the word I'm looking for?
Diverse.
Yes, thank you. Such a diverse word. You can use it as a noun, a verb, an adjective. It can be used in many things. So yeah, I would say the F word is probably my favorite. And then as far as words that I actually use, I guess I would have to go with bitch because one of my moves is the bitch maker. So yeah, that would have to be the word that I actually use.
Love it. Bet. Well, listen, those are all my questions. I appreciate you coming on our show. So the last thing I need from you is to let all of our listeners and our viewers know where they can find you.
Yeah, Osiris underscore the champ on Instagram. I think I'm on Twitter or X or whatever it's called under that same thing. I don't use it though, so definitely don't message me on there. I'm also Osiris underscore the champ on Snapchat. And and I do use that pretty actively, actually. That's a great place to see topless shots of me in the morning after my workouts. So anyone that wants to, see what I look like underneath the shirt, check out my Snapchat. Otherwise, follow my Instagram. You'll see all sorts of things there. You'll be able to see where you can get a discount on Blackstone Lab supplements, on Element electrolytes, and many more things to come.
Well, there you go. He told you where you can find him. He gave you his promo codes and told you to check out the links in all of his bios on all of his social media platforms. So you guys know what to do. You guys are just really just kind of sitting there just looking at me as I'm looking at you guys. But just like everybody's favorite part of a wrestling match, we gotta take this home because this is the Three Count Podcast presents Now Entering, and you know, like I said, I'm the host of the show, Clifford Red Dog Miller, the man that leads you up that mountain called wrestling. And, like I said, it's never about me. It's about who's entering. So who's entering? You see that man right there. He's in the shadows himself. The man, the myth, the legend, the man known as Osirus. And you guys will do tune into the next episode and be there, or you're legitimately follow us on all of our social media platforms. You're subscribed to our YouTube channel. You're following us on Spotify. You're even checking us out on Amazon Music. You're even wanting to check us out on iHeartRadio or whatever that dumb jingle is that they do. You're buying all of our merch on For Your Wear. You're buying our merch on Pro Wrestling Tees. You're even, you know what? You're even sharing this with your mom, your dad, your uncle, your auntie, your cousins, your brother, your sister, your stepbrothers, your stepsisters, your pets, your best friends. You probably cut that person off once or twice, because you're just angry at them. You're even sharing this with your haters because we love haters too. So you're doing all that stuff, or you're really just kind of waiting for this episode and you're waiting for that outro, and then you're choosing another episode to listen to. Kawaii. What's going on? It is Clifford Red Dog Miller, the man that leads you up that mountain called wrestling. And what we need from you guys is just kind of show some support, right? We want you guys to go to our YouTube channel at the 3 Count Podcast, go on to our Twitch channel, 3 Count Pod, or even our Facebook page, 3 Count Podcast, and just give us a like, follow, subscribe, even give us a comment, right? Do all that cool stuff. Share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with your enemies, right? Or you can even come talk to us and just chat us up, right? Find us on Twitter at 3count_pod. Find us on IG and on TikTok at 3 Count Pod. Go ahead and leave us those comments. We want to hear from all of you guys. We're going to keep putting on videos and stuff like that. We want to keep making this content better, so we want your guys' support. Also, if you guys want to, go support us at prowrestlingtees.com/the 3 Count Podcast, or even find us on foryourwear.com. Give us the support. Show us your guys' love because we want to give it right back to y'all. So, in the meantime, between time, love y'all.